Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Vince Anello Show on WJJL 1440. And you can call us live at 297-1059. Our guest today is Seth Piccirillo. He's the head of the community development here in the city of Niagara Falls. And we're going to ask Mr. Piccirillo to give us an update on what's going on and where the residents can get involved. We certainly need to be involved, so let's welcome Mr. Piccirillo.
Morning. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my hope that we can keep the community informed, because my feeling is that without an informed community, we keep making the same mistakes over and over.
You're very right.
Again, good morning. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dive right into,
Sure.
what you're doing and kind of give us a little bit of a report.
Sure. Actually, today's a very big day for our department in community development. We set our budget from the federal government, from the Department of HUD, every year around this time. And what we've done over the last few months is we had 4 neighborhood meetings throughout the city. One in LaSalle on Buffalo Avenue, one in the North End, one in Main Street at the Carnegie Building, and one in Ferry Avenue to get input from the community of, you live here every day, you know your streets better than us. What does your area need? After that, we take applications from people that want to apply for those federal funds, which include the Community Development Block Grant Fund, the Home Renovation Program, and the Emergency Grant Solutions Program.
So, just to clear that up, sure. That's like 3 different sources of revenue that come to the city,
right,
to the community development. And I want people to know that you actually deal with a lot of different programs that you have to apply and justify to the government,
yep,
for you to be able to receive those revenues for the city.
Right, that's a good point. The 3 programs, the Community Development Block Grant is of things like demolitions, neighborhood investments, things like playgrounds, streets, housing renovation, youth programs. That's the one. The second one is called the Home Program, which is for prime occupant home renovation, deferred loans for home renovation throughout the city. And then the third one, which is the Emergency Grant Solutions, is directed at trying to prevent homelessness, and beyond preventing homelessness, get people back into housing, get people through rapid rehousing to get them back on their feet. So we have all the community input. We put out a survey for the community, both online and in paper. We advertise all of this, take applications, and then it culminates into today. 2 weeks ago, we put out our draft budget for those 3 programs. And tonight at 6 o'clock at City Hall and City Hall Chambers, what I'll do is go through all of the programs, which have been available in our draft budget at the Main Street Library, the Carnegie Building, and then online at our website at nf-cd.org. And then we will ask the community for public input at that hearing. But it doesn't stop there. Starting tomorrow, we'll have a 30-day public comment period. So after you take a look at the draft budget, you can say, here's what I support, here's what I don't like, here's what I want to talk about some more. All of that is then presented to the City Council and the federal government. Our budget is both approved by the City Council and then HUD. So what we're proud of is that community gets many cracks at this budget. You get to tell us what you think beforehand, then you get to also review our draft before we bring it to City Council and the federal government. If I could just talk about a couple of what I think are highlights of the plan. In our plan 2 years ago, we concentrated on blight demolition. We did about $600,000 in blight demolition. That was our key focus. Last year, we tried to do some transformation of streets. We put in money for street work. We also were part of the Housing Visions project that will change 5th through 7th Street on Walnut Avenue. This year, in listening to the community, what they were saying was we need things in our neighborhoods, and especially directed at our young people and our young families. People ages 12 to 17, young families with young children. That's who we need more of. That's who we've lost in the past. Let's make sure that they have amenities. So 3 park amenities that I think make sense are replacement of the Hyde Park playground. That was a big part of the Parks Master Plan from a couple years ago, so we think that could be a signature playground. The creation of a skate park, which we've talked, Mr. Anello, about in the past. If you talk to kids, they will tell you about the need for skate parks. We just had a meeting with skaters 2 weeks ago. 25 young people showed up. We started a Facebook page and an online petition. It's something
Right.
that they're looking for.
Exactly, and just to plug my administration
Yeah.
a little bit, we actually had a group together of young people that signed up specifically for the skateboard, and what led us to that was that they were skating on a city property.
They still are.
Okay,
Yeah.
the city hall, and which is a good place to
Yeah.
skate. So what the administrator did was put a group together. Then they brought in ideas, and we had just like you have
Sure.
almost like you have the charrettes,
Yep.
where everybody brings up their ideas. You talk about them. You start a process of elimination, consolidate ideas, and you keep moving along until you get to the final product. Just so that there is for people to understand why sometimes I become pretty passionate. Excited about some of these issues that come up is the council killed it because the only place we could do it for the money that we had was on the ramp.
Yeah.
Okay, because nobody was using the top level of the ramp already. All kids are going to fly off the off the wall. This and that and the other thing. Like nobody's ever invented railings or fencing or anything like that. So when we asked for another area. To suggest another area, we were going to suggest the Franco Park because that area has been used since then. Has been used for spoils from construction around the area. They turned that down. So it's nice to know that since it's election year next year, the city council members are going to recognize that doing things for the kids in a nice planned way, it's a good thing.
Well, I think it's one of those things where I was talking to some people that were in their late 30s that actually showed up at the meeting and said it's something that they've wanted for many years, right? So we don't have we're going to continue to talk to the skaters and the community about the location. We do not have a set location. I could tell you the places that we're looking include Legends Park. We're looking at
Right.
DeFranco and looking at Gill Creek. I would say Gill Creek probably a little bit less. But it's not predetermined. We want to talk to the community about it. A lot of people have said High Park as well, but what you need, because we're going after some other grant funding from foundations, skateboard foundations, and those do exist, is that they want it to be visible from the street. They want it to be around places like libraries and schools.
Right.
So Legends does fit a lot of that criteria.
Right.
But we're gonna talk to the community about that. And then the last one, because what we hear a lot of is that LaSalle is often not invested in with community development money. There's been reasons for that in the past. You have to make a justification of how a neighborhood investment makes sense based on the type of housing around it.
Right.
We've made a justification that some park improvements and playground improvements at 70th Street Park fit into our plan. So that's also in there. So in addition to housing renovations programs and Isaiah 61 and youth programs in this budget, I think that those three park plans are a direct response to what the community is looking for.
And that's great. I'm glad that the city's moving in that direction. And but just off the top of my head, one comment that I'd like to make, and maybe I'll make it at the public hearing also, but DeFranco Park, for instance, that's a very valuable piece of property that's adjacent to other private pieces of property that people are talking about developing at some point. It was my philosophy as a councilman and as a mayor that the city of Niagara Falls, because it has a lot of property that's exempt from taxes, whether they're non-for-profits or whether they're county-owned pieces of property or state-owned pieces of property or federally owned pieces of property, or the New York State Power Authority pieces of property, which they cut a swath right through the city of Niagara Falls to where they divided in two, for sure. Not another piece of property, not another square foot of property should be, should especially downtown, should be used for anything but something that at some point the city can get some taxes on to stabilize, because the only way the city of Niagara Falls can help the taxpayer in LaSalle and Cayuga Island or wherever is by improving the properties at this end or getting a tax revenue at this end from the hotels, from development. So my philosophy was, look, the only way I can help the people in LaSalle who never used to get money for community development or anything because they didn't qualify, the only way I can do it is by making this area stronger as a tax base. I'm not talking about anything else.
No, I think you're right, and that's why on paper, and if you look, and we've been doing some preliminary work, Legends Park makes a lot of sense. But what we wanted to avoid was coming out and saying, "Hey, we're going to put this skate park in this space, and that's done." We want to avoid ever doing that. So we're going to continue to talk about it, but we want to go after community development money for that skate park, and also go after that outside foundation money from Tony Hawk is a famous skateboarder. He has a Tony Hawk Foundation. It's very interesting what they do around the world. We're hoping to apply for a $25,000 grant from them and look at some other sources too.
Now, have you met with some of these young people already?
I have.
Okay, what's your, because I'll give you my impression.
Sure.
What's your impression?
My impression with them is that they feel like they're always getting kicked out of somewhere. Right, so what they're saying is we're looking for a place, and not just a skate park. We want it to be unique. We want it to be a place where we can go and skate. And what they also say is let's make it, such an interesting place that maybe people would want to have competitions there. Exactly.
Now, how did they handle themselves at the meeting?
I thought they handled themselves very well.
Okay. The reason I wanted to, bring, you say it, was because that was my impression on the meetings that we had. And in many cases, I would have to say that they handled themselves better than a lot of grown-ups did at public meetings. And the reason being, I mean, the reason I made that comparison is because they were there about the idea and how to make it happen, how we're going to work together to make it happen.
I agree. They were, and they ranged age, and it was a very diverse group, too. They were excited about the idea. They had, what we did was put up boards of, what should we, they had sticky notes. What should we do? What should we avoid? They stayed for about 45 minutes, and those boards were full of sticky notes. And we went through and looked at the ideas. Very good ideas. And there's always this thought that young people don't get involved in government. And there's 25 kids in a room talking about a government project. I was very, very encouraged at the end of that meeting.
Not only that, but think about it. If this becomes a successful venture, because that's what I was shooting for, think about when they become voters and when they become parents, how their perception of government will be so much different than what the perception of their parents might be.
Well, and here's the interesting part too for them is if this works successfully, and we got a lot of work to do on it.
Sure.
They can say, all right, how do you affect change in the community? You get people together.
Right.
You start a petition. You come up with an idea. It's like it works for anything. If you get a group of people together for a positive change, in community, this is how you do it, and they're doing it very well.
No, exactly, and that's one thing that we can, I think, as a city, we can be proud of. That when some of the children are asked to come forward, when they do, it's usually, you're usually surprised at what the reaction is, in a positive, very positive way.
Sure, that's great.
And I think that's the kind of thing that brings a community together, and that's the kind of thing that we don't do enough of.
Agreed.
Seth, when you mentioned the budget, I've been trying, through social media, through the radio program, encourage city government to set a policy for the expenditures of casino revenues. Because right now we don't have a written policy in the sense that, every year we set up a budget. Like, for instance, by law, the city of Niagara Falls has to have a city budget, and in the back of the budget, a lot of people don't know, is another budget that's mandated by municipal law, and that's the capital plan, which is a 5-year plan, usually. Now, I've been asking and pushing for a policy for casino revenue that would actually mirror what the community development does for their budget. Think about it. You had 4 neighborhood meetings. Now there isn't anybody that has any interest in casino money that can say, gee, I didn't know that. Because if you don't show up for a budget hearing, meeting, neighborhood meeting, well, you're not going to know.
Well, I like the process of the 4, if you do 4 workshops on anything, right?
Right.
And then you have your standard public hearing, a survey, and then a 30-day public write-in time period. At that point, you can say, I've reached out, right?
Right.
And you advertise everything, you go through it and do your best to reach out to the community. And I have found that they will respond to you. I was at a public meeting last night for development. I think every development should start with a public meeting in the neighborhood. It started out very, there were some tense words, some, general distrust of development in the city for the last 30 years.
Right.
But after we got through that, we had a really meaningful conversation of what the neighborhood expects and what they won't tolerate.
Right.
Because, like I said before, they know better than us. They live there every day. So I think anytime you're talking about expenditure of money, community-based budgeting is something I think makes a lot of sense.
So if anybody at City Hall other than Seth who's sitting here, and that's about the only way they're listening to me at City Hall, if they're sitting right in front of me, the point is that we should have a roadmap for how we spend this casino money, because to me that keeps the public officials thinking. It keeps the public informed. Right now, I'm sure that if you asked 100 people in the city of Niagara Falls, how much money has the city of Niagara Falls received in the last 10 years, nobody would know the answer, including myself.
And it doesn't help, but what doesn't help there is that there's a lot of people that misquote those numbers too,
Right, exactly.
not in City Hall, but outside. And I think one thing I do want to say about the City Council for this budget over the last year, they have set up that neighborhood workshop model with neighbor to neighbor.
Right.
Which I think they're getting that type of feedback, and I think that's great. And they've also been working with us on this budget. We want to get everybody on the same page. They've been very helpful. That's the one thing, in a couple years ago, there was a lot of, and a lot of it was needless, kind of going back and forth on the community development budget.
Right.
It doesn't make anyone look good, and it's not productive. So we want to get everybody on the same page early.
Well, when we talk about those kind of things that happen because of a majority obstructionism, I always try to refer to it as a cabal. This way people start understanding when I'm talking about a cabal, I'm talking about when 3 council members, because we have a 5-member council, decide to make a pact with the devil and not look at issues individually. They're just going to say no.
And for us, what we try to do on our end is continue to communicate with elected officials in the community, and if at any point we think we've communicated enough, communicate some more, because you can never communicate enough.
No, that's true. Now, let's go to our callers. I know a couple of callers were on the line. I think some of them dropped off, but we have callers now that we can, yes, caller, you're on.
Is that me?
Yes.
Seth, I look at.
Hi, Mr. Bishka, how you doing?
I don't agree with what you're doing. Some things I do agree with.
Okay.
But I was kind of shocked when I read in a paper here where the city council approved $146,624 to the Apollo Dismantling Service for the removal of asbestos from Highland Avenue at the old fire hall on the corner of Highland and College. Now, I went over it. I drive by that place all the time. That building's been vacant probably for about 40, 50 years. You could see the windows, you could see the roof, you could see the ceiling. It's all rotted and dilapidated. It's not a big building. It's only 20 feet wide, 40 feet long. For the city to go on out and spend this kind of money, they could have taken that $146,000.
Well, Dave, before you go
I'd love to
further,
actually,
let him answer that. That's why we can grab one point at a time and really get an answer for it.
That's cool.
I appreciate you bringing this up, because honestly, this is the most important project to me. And I think because, not for me personally, because what I think it means. We went out and got a grant from the state for $132,000 to help renovate this building. We talk a lot about jobs, 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 and the need to help train our people in the city. BOCES and those programs are located in Sanborn, and for somebody from Niagara Falls who does not have a car, it might as well be located in California, because in the winter it would take them about 2 hours with transfers to get there. The reason we're renovating the building at Highland Avenue is that so the Isaiah 61 job training can be there. It is not a new program. It's been around for about 2 years. If you look at their graduation rate from their trades training program and OSHA 10 card program, 75% of the graduates, which are about 100 right now, have found job placement. I don't know of anyone else doing that type of high percentage job placement, not only in the city, but in the region.
Seth, I agree with.
If I can just one more.
No, let me finish.
I just want to go with one more point, because I think you bring up a very good point about cost and value. We think that building, because it does have good structural bones, okay, makes sense for the renovation. We think it's in the right place. They're also going to have their reuse store there where they sell building materials from salvage buildings, where it can be accessed from really all points of the city. DeVoe, North End, through High Park Boulevard, the rest of the city, and also town of Niagara and out. We know that this project costs money, but that's why we went out and found grant funding, but we think that it brings more value than cost. That's why we're pursuing it. I think you bring up a good point, but that's why we think it makes sense.
Now, the 146,000 that Dave has mentioned, that's in addition to the 132,000 that we.
So what we will do with the initial grant for 132,000, that will pay for, I would say, over 90% of the asbestos abatement.
Right.
The rest of the money is funded through casino dollars. The main other expenditure for that building will be roof, right?
Right.
After the roof, the finishes of the building are not that extensive because it's going to be a training facility on the ground floor. It's got to be open so welding can happen there. So,
right.
Building materials can be brought in and out.
Seth, can I say something?
Absolutely.
Seth, look I'm all for that Isaiah project. We got to do something for these kids, get them off the street, get them trained, teaching them and everything else like the old trivocational.
Exactly.
But my God, now you're talking 146,000 plus all this other money. They could have built a beautiful pole barn, state-of-the-art, heavily insulated, with the best of everything in a decent area where they could have been something proud. This building is small. You have tremendous contamination in the air coming from that plant across the street. You could see that white clouds bellowing out of that place. You have a shovel-ready land in the back. I think it was either Santa Rosa or Cerrone owns, where they tore down that building and they were planning on building some kind of plant there. This thing would be right directly in front of it. This could have been put in a hell of a lot better place, a better location, someplace where we could be proud of it, a beautiful building. For the amount of money they're putting into that small little ragtag building that's been empty for 50 years, they could have had a state-of-the-art building.
I don't think
something doesn't make sense here.
I don't think it
don't make sense.
I don't think it's ragtag. And also think of it this way: that building is owned by the city, right? Who pays?
Are we going to collect taxes on it afterwards?
Yes. Without any, you will collect regular taxes at that building as any Isaiah 61 project property. When they take title, they pay taxes like you pay taxes on your house. One more point about the fire hall. We own the building, right? The city. Who will have to pay over $100,000 and still abate the assessment when we demolish it?
Yeah,
Us.
Yeah, you have to abate the asbestos before you demolish it.
So either you're talking $250,000 to rehab that building.
But Mr. Bishka, I have to abate.
David,
I have to abate it either way. If I tear it down, I still have to abate it.
The city would have to spend $146,000.
They're not going to spend $146,000 on asbestos removal on that building. That building is too small. We got big buildings in the city where they come in there 2-3 days later, the asbestos is cleaned down and it's torn down. That's a small building. That's only 2 floors. It's 20 by 40. It's got a narrow front door on there.
It's got a garage door. It has it has a garage.
This is crazy.
It has it has a garage door, and here again, no matter what, the city's going to have to pay something to demolish that building if we don't do something with it.
I'd like to just say this.
It will. I'm not done yet, Dave.
All right.
It will collect the same amount of taxes. It'll collect taxes without any type of pilot from Isaiah 61. And it's going to be a place that's accessible by the entire city to train our young people. I want to help train people in trades.
You could train
I'm still not done, Dave. I believe in the trot method. My family's a product of trot. We're trying to bring some of that back, and we think this fire hall is the right place for it.
Well, let me just say this, and I'm going to close.
Okay.
People, if there's anybody out here listening to the show, take a ride over there on the corner of College and Highland Avenue.
Please do.
Take a look how $250,000 is being spent on a small, little, tiny building. A small, tiny building. We could have a proud building built for that, a beautiful building built for $250,000. And they're doing this on a 20-foot by 40-foot building in an area that's highly polluted. People, take a look at this and see how your taxpayers' money is being spent.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Whether it's grants from the government, it's still our taxes. It's our money, and we should have a better voice in this.
Please do.
It's terrible how the money is being squandered.
And then I'm going to add something on there. The next time that people want to say, how do we train our young people in trades,
and then beautiful building,
and then they don't have a solution or a plan for it, that makes a difference.
Dave, this is going in the right direction.
It's not going in the right direction, Vince.
No, I'm talking about educating the kids. I'm not talking about the rest of it. I'm not talking about the rest
Not the
of it.
building. For taking care of the kids, yes, but not for that building. Not to put $250,000 into that 20 by 40-foot building. My building that I built in my garage, I built it myself. I know what it cost. And they're putting $250,000 in a building like that. Come on. Something is wrong here.
All right, thanks a lot,
Be
Dave.
graft or something.
Thanks, thanks.
It's graft. No, I'm gonna. That's always a favorite comment to people. That's graft. We talk a lot. We have a lot of conversations in the city about what we should do. We have put in place a job training program. We have found a building that we think makes more sense to renovate than to demolish. We do a lot of demolitions in the city. We demolish a lot of historic buildings in the city. This one is a building that many people say something should be done with it. We're trying to do something with it. The council, and especially Councilman Walker, said find cost-effective ways to do the finishes to make this project as cost-effective as possible. We will do that, but we are going to get past the conversation stage on a training facility in the city.
Okay, thank you. And